And that's the thing, Sammy. Like, I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter for Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay. I mean, I like Aaron Nagler and I like Tom Grossi, and there's somebody else I'm forgetting, maybe Chad Ryder. Somebody like my friends who I like I will sit there and I will see what they do. And like Aaron, like I like Aaron because our music tastes align and like other things that we have kind of connect. So I really enjoy it. I don't spend a lot of time going in and chiming in on takes about other teams in the NFC North that do not pertain to my job. But I swear to God, the second I say anything about any other side, oh, the Packer fans, like I don't know if they have it like an alert set on their phone, but they got to weigh in. Like Greg and I had this wonderful conversation, and I felt complimentary to Jameis Love there over in Green Bay. And I said, listen, I go, he's an exciting player. He does a lot of nice things. I think he's a good player. He makes a lot of bad decisions. And like, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. You have eyes, you watch a game, you're like, yeah, could be a little bit better in this space. But no, people like, and they got so worked up coming in. Look at the all-time hater. I was saying your quarterback is good. Like I cannot win. And unfortunately for a lot of you, I do get paid to talk about this stuff. So I will continue to talk about it, but stop getting so, if it's going to bother you that much, it's like talking to children. Okay. Fans of the NFC North are like children. Like if it's going to bother, eventually I did not let my son play Roadblocks anymore because like he's getting too upset. Now I feel like I got to take Twitter away from Packer. Like this is making you too upset, sir. For a team that apparently has had so much success in their life, you guys get worked up by a lot of weird stuff. But let's talk about that in a moment. Sammy, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois, the sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. Always a great Wednesday night. Not only do we have Take It to the Rank tonight, I think the challenge is still going on. I don't know. I've been recording those for anybody who is a fan of MTV's Real World, Road Rules, the challenge, all that stuff. I was on with John and Beth, Getting Real with John and Beth. I was a part of their podcast this week. If you are interested in the real world, especially old school real world, you're going to want to go and check that out. We had a great time talking about it this week. Also this evening, we have AEW is in Salt Lake City, I believe. There's some NBA going on. A lot of cool stuff. I don't know if the World Series is starting soon. I don't know if that starts tonight. Maybe. I don't know. A lot of cool things happening. Arsenal, Liverpool this week. And, of course, it's the Bears against the Washington Commanders. And it's going to be epic. And I want to remind everybody that the world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is right at your fingertips in Illinois. The Circa Sports app is sports betting the way it should be. Bet anywhere in Illinois and experience high betting limits, better money line splits, more in-game betting, and the best customer service. Download your new bookie today and visit circasports.com and start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB 8 or text to 833-234 or reach out to Kurt Warner because I saw him do a bunch of commercials of it over the weekend. He's there. Set your limits is what he told me. In any event, let's bring on the man of the hour. He's back from London last week, but it's been a bye week. We're ready to go. Greg Braggs is with me. I saw you early on. I was going to tell you to change the jacket. What are we doing here?
It's the start of the NBA season. All the things you named tonight, the Bulls start their season and we're tanking. We are immediately tanking here. One game into the season, we're trying to get Cooper Flag from Duke. So we need to lose as many games
Oh no, don't do this.
Let's go Bulls. Full tank mode.
Let's go
tank
Bulls.
the right way. Tank the right way.
My God.
Do like the Bears did a couple years ago.
No, the Bears didn't have to. They a lot of people did all the work for us.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, they tanked the right way. They were competitive, they were entertaining, and yet they were still the worst team in football. Thank you, Lovie Smith, for making sure that was reality, and that led to the path of Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Tyreek Stevenson and so much more great things ahead. So sometimes tanking works.
That's true. And I will say, though, the Carolina Panthers still would have needed a quarterback. They probably would have traded up again, probably assuming the Texans to be believed. I'll give the Texans the benefit of the doubt. They still take CJ Stroud. The Carolina Panthers would still take Bryce Young, who has been reinstalled as the starter for the Carolina Panthers. I did see that Andy Dalton was in a car accident. Haven't really weighed into the details too much, so I hope Andy Dalton is all right. I've always liked Andy Dalton. Anytime I've gotten a chance to talk to him.
Well, I guess he hurt his thumb, and then I think that might have opened the door for Bryce Young to get reinstated as the starter.
Andy Dalton's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, please, my thumb hurts. Like, well,
it doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, obviously it's great to hear that Andy Dalton and his family is okay, obviously from the car accident, but like the Panthers are so bad now. Like, it is wild to me that they were considering not playing Bryce Young at all. I don't know, we'll never know now that the circumstances have changed, but like at some point, whether you're getting rid of him at the end of the year or not, you got to do whatever you can with him, maybe try to up his value or see what you got in him. So, at the end of the day, the Panthers did right by us. They set us on a pathway to set our franchise up. So I'm no longer rooting against them. I mean, I guess we still need their second round pick.
No, we want that number 2 overall pick
to be as bad as possible. But at the end of the day, I'm not rooting for Bryce Young's failures as much as I was last year.
No. I'm rooting for them. I have a lot of love for some of the players on the Carolina Panthers right now. And for me, when I look at it as well, I do want the number 1 overall pick, or in the second round, obviously, pick would be pick 33, just because I want to run around saying essentially a first round pick. And just to have people who are so willing to say that 2 years ago, when the Steelers took Joey Porter Jr., like, well, it was essentially a first round selection. Okay, so like 33 should be essentially a first round select. Oh, it doesn't work that way. It's funny that it never works in the favor of it's never like the Bears never get the benefit of the doubt in anything like that. And so I think I don't even think it's like kind of I know like fans of every team always feels this, like everybody's against them, but I literally know that everybody's against the Bears. Like no fan base gets the grief, because some of the things that are going on in the NFL right now are so wild. You're like, why? Like the Bears always have to wear every little small detail that happens to them, but these other teams make mistakes, make bad trades, do all this other stuff. Nobody, it seems, ever talks about that. They're like, yeah, whatever, maybe Cleveland, but that's about it.
Right. No, 100%. But we seem to be like coming out of that, right? Where we've been the whipping boy for a while now. And but now it's starting to feel like we're turning that corner where, we're starting to leave the doldrums, the basement of the NFL and the laughing stock. And, the Lions pulled themselves out of that. And maybe the Bears are next in line for that. And this next 3-game stretch, I think is their opportunity to really, they've kind of cracked the door open to relevancy and respectability. And now these next 3 games, you have a real opportunity to kick that door down and start demanding some respect from the rest of the fan bases around this league.
And first up is the Washington Commanders. And of course, we heard Caleb Williams speaking at the podium today. He slipped up just once. There was one time he went back to the original name, or the former name, I should say, which is understandable. He grew up there. Like, it's okay. I still now, like I always, like if you're old enough, you're like, this is how I refer to this team for a long, or actually I never did. Right. I'm not going to say never. Would always use the Washington a lot more than I think of it.
Yeah, like at what point was it when we transitioned off the Washington Bullets into the Washington Wizards,
right?
And like, I don't really remember that period where you're like, oh, I keep calling them the Bullets, but I know that time period did exist.
I don't think it ever did. I think people were like, fine. It's different. Like nobody cared about the Bullets. Washington has a historic NFL franchise, and I know that I've talked about it at great length on this show. We might have talked about this recently too. Like, if you were a certain age, or when you're really an ardent fan, or just, like if you think about people like Mike North would probably attest to this, about like in the 80s, the teams that you hated were Washington and San Francisco. To some respect, the Giants, but like Green Bay was such a non-factor. Like Green Bay didn't matter. Green Bay was what the Lions were a decade ago. Like nobody cared about them. Dick hated them because he was old enough, because he was even older.
Right.
But like for people who were fans in the 80s, nobody ever talked about the Packers. We played one game against them in Milwaukee. It used to be week 3 or whatever. And both teams were on the same, like the sideline was on the same side. That, to me, growing up, is what I knew of Green Bay. Was just kind of like, oh, that's the team that plays in a baseball stadium where both sidelines, both benches are on the same side. I didn't know there was a historic rival, or that this team was good. They were as relevant as the Canton Bulldog when I was growing up. So it's always funny when the Packer fans want to sit here and just get a lot of wind in their jaw. Like, we've been embarrassing you for like, I'm like, okay, your last Super Bowl title was 2009. Like, that's a long time ago. Like that's a significant, like, you're not embarrassing us when you don't win the championship. Like what happened to Titletown? Why are you not trying to win? Why are you more concerned with a Super Bowl or beating us as opposed to winning a Super Bowl? Like, I would not, if the Bears swept the Packers, were good enough, like a good team where you're in the playoffs every year and losing in the NFC Championship game. It would rock me more to lose in the NFC Championship game. I would never console myself with like, well, at least we're beating the Lions. Like, I know, I don't get that mentality as a fan.
No, I get that. And you know what? When, greatness is very, very rarely blessed upon the teams you root for. And we're proud to say, wearing the Bulls, jacket here, and Michael Jordan's over my shoulder here. When Chicago had greatness, we found our way to 6 championships. Thank you very much. And Green Bay's been blessed with 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and each of them have 1 Super Bowl to show for it. So that's not exactly, if your bar as a Packer fan is that we're better than the Bears, then your standard is not high enough. Now, I get it might be fun to have to mess with fans about, but at the same time, your point of emphasis should be much higher than we're better than the Bears.
No, but you're in Wisconsin, so I don't think you really have, you don't really have much to crow about anyways. And I know this too, and I think I've obviously told this story because people probably might or might not know I'm a Lakers fan. So, and I actually got my dad not to root for the Bulls, because which is an easy sell in the 80s, because the Bulls were terrible for the first couple of years in the 80s. And the Lakers were winning. We were living out here in Southern California. And I remember asking my dad before he passed, I said, hey, honestly, like, how upset are you that you didn't get Jordan? And he's like, if I wouldn't have had Kobe, he's like, I really would have hated your butt. Like, I really would have been upset with you, but he's like, I got 10 titles to 6, so it's all fine. So you have that going for us, but still, we're getting way, way off the rails, because we do want to talk about the Commanders. It seems to me, I don't know where you fall on this, or I know we talked about this on Monday night. We do, by the way, CHGO After Dark Monday night. You guys should come out and hang out with us. For those of you that do come to both shows, thank you so much for being here for both of them. We won't try to cover a lot of the same ground, but at the same time, don't want to ignore it. But we have a little bit more clarity right now, where it now seems doubtful that Jaden Daniels is not going to play, to the point of, like, to me, it would be a real big smoke and mirror show, especially for a matchup where you flexed into the 4:00 window on the East Coast.
Yep.
This is a game the NFL would want to promote, obviously. So the fact that they're saying highly unlikely, I feel like if this was another team, if the Commanders were playing the Saints, for instance, I think Jaden Daniels would be ruled out already. But because of network ratings, they're trying to dangle the carrot long enough to keep the conversation going that maybe Jaden Daniels plays, but it feels right now that he's not going to play.
Yeah, and it's shocking, honestly, because we all kind of got dialed up for this here over the last 3-4 weeks, not just the last week of the bye. You know, as Jaden Daniels started to look like the front runner to be Rookie of the Year, and even getting somewhat into the MVP conversation, you know, and Caleb Williams trying to catch up to that level.
Yeah.
You know, people started to really look at this game and say, hey, and then so much so, like you said, the NFL flexes it to 325. So, you know, the one guy that I've really looked at the last couple of days, Ian Rappaport, who was all over, you know, the offseason stuff with the Bears, you know, and somebody that's obviously his resume and respectability speaks for itself. But two things stood out to me. When he said yesterday that Jaden Daniels is very much in doubt to play on Sunday, to say it that way,
yeah,
you know, to me really stood out, because Ian is not the type of guy to put that kind of phrasing unless he has the backing of some sort of information. And then the same thing today, Jaden Daniels doesn't practice, and you see a lot of guys from the Washington Post and all these different beat reporters saying, you know, this is where he's at. Week to week was the phrase that Dan Quinn said. And then Ian Rappaport comes back again today to double down on what he said yesterday and says, appears to be trending toward Marcus Mariota getting the start on Sunday. And so obviously nothing is set in stone. Let's see if there's any change to the practice availability over the next couple days. But you're right. It does feel like it's more likely than not he does not play. And I think the way I look at it is, you know, I heard Dan Quinn say he wanted him to be full tilt or full throttle to if he's going to give him the green light. And I think a big part of that is because what has made Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders offense so successful is that he has this dual threat capability. And if you take that part out of his game, what does their offense look like, and how they're trying to run plays that they've been calling for 6 weeks now? And to me, if you watch the Panthers game where he gets hurt on the very first play of the game, they ran a few more plays with him in there, and he's going down before contact. At one point, he throws the ball. He's immediately holding his rib cage. And so to me, it's almost like, as much as they want him to play, I'm sure he wants to play, I'm sure. And the national audience wants to see this matchup. But at the same time, if the Washington Commanders and Cliff Kingsbury can't feel like they can call the kind of game they want to call, then why play with a hand tie behind your back when you can have Marcus Mariota go out there and have more of your playbook at your disposal?
Yeah, and he played very well in that game against the Carolina Panthers. They ran up a ton of points, and it was a runaway. And I agree with you. I truly believe that the Commanders are going to look at the long-term issue here. None of these, I'm assuming there can't be anybody in the building who was still there when RG3 was the quarterback of the Commanders back in the day. And what happens when you try to rush quarterbacks back way too early? I think you could look at what the Colts have done. If you ask me, I think the way the Colts have been handling Anthony Richardson over the last 2 seasons, probably not the way to go. I know that there was a game a couple of weeks ago where Anthony Richardson goes out, and you're like, oh God, that looked ugly. He came back in, and the first play they dial up is a quarterback draw or a run or something. You're like, what are they doing? Right. And I think Washington wants to avoid that kind of situation. And while it's great for TV ratings and interest in the NFL, 2 of the bright young stars at the quarterback position, we'd love to see them go head to head. However, you got to be smart with him. You don't want to go out there and put him in harm's way, put him at risk, especially against a defense that gets busy against quarterbacks. So you also have that part of it as well. It's not like you're going back in to play, you know, one of the bottom feeders of the NFL. You're going up against one of the top defenses in the league. So there's a lot of factors at play, which to me, and again, I will do my best to go out there. I know who to ask. I know who to get the whole thing. Cause like, it's funny. Cause this is, if you saw it on Fantasy Live, what player was it where he was a surprise inactive, and I got him off the air, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I actually really didn't know this one, but there's some guys who will tell me, who will let me. I'm like, just tell me what's up, like what's going on. So we will cover this over the next couple of days here on the Sick Podcast. I will let you know as soon as I find out. I'm curious to find out too, because I know that you guys did a show with Cole Kmet this week where he talked about not facing the Commanders with Jaden Daniels. We'll have Tyler Scott on this show in a couple of days, not talking about what's it like when a guy like Jaden Daniels is not. I will not spoil either one of their answers. Go listen to those shows. I'm not going to tell you what they said, but you got to go out there and listen. But so, Greg, I'm just going to ask you personally, your personal feeling. Do you want the Bears to face Jaden Daniels, or you're like, I don't care who the quarterback is. I just want to go out there and see us win.
Yeah, I do not care who they play at the end. I don't even really care how they win necessarily, as long as they win. These next 3 games, I'm like hyper obsessed and hyper focused on, by any means necessary, find your way somehow by the grace of the football gods to 7-2. Because if you can get to 7-2 before the gauntlet, as we're all calling it, you have a serious opportunity to make the playoffs this year. You have a guarantee that every game the rest of the year, after you start 7-2, every single game, the last 8 games of the year, are playoff type games for Caleb Williams against playoff caliber teams. So however it shakes out after that, I know that Caleb Williams is playing in the highest of leverage of games. Of course, if Jaden Daniels wants to play on Sunday, great. That's going to be a great matchup, and that's a test that the Bears, will do right by, having that challenge ahead of them. If the playoffs started today, the Bears would be traveling on right now as the standings sit. They would be traveling to Washington in the first round. That's that. So this is technically a playoff matchup, but we're just so early in the season still. And each team is still trying to find themselves. Like, as much as we can say this is definitely the biggest midseason game that the Bears have had, probably since, you could argue there's some games at the end of last year as they tried to backdoor their way into the playoffs, but you could argue that this is the biggest midseason game since 2018. But I'm looking at November and December when the stakes get much, much higher than, a mid to late October game. And so it's just, to me, if Jaden Daniels wants to play, I think that's great. Get the heavyweight bout 1 versus 2 in the draft. But at the end of the day, I do not care. I just want the Bears to win by any means necessary.
Yeah, I don't care either. And I know that, let's say that Jaden Daniels doesn't play, the Bears go on to win. There will be people, mostly Packers fans, I'm assuming, who will come out and be like, well, you beat the Commanders with Marcus Mariota. You didn't face Jaden Daniels. And be like, I don't care, because nobody in Green Bay is apologizing for their victory over the Texans, who were without Nico Collins, who are missing 6 starters on defense. Like, nobody's talked about that. Like, nobody even brings that up outside of me. I guess I always forget, like, I'm in the national media. I bring this stuff all the time. Outside of me, nobody brings this stuff up, because like the Packers never get caveats. They're just like, oh, that's the greatest team ever. Like, hey, Jameis Love over there is throwing all these picks. They're like, that doesn't matter. He's just throwing touchdowns too.
Jameis Love.
What do you mean?
I just like how you keep throwing this in there. You said
what,
it
throwing what in there?
Jameis Love.
Oh, Jordan Love. Oh, I'm sorry. See, they're so interconnected. I didn't realize I was doing that. But
Packer fans are just in love with you right now.
Who cares? When was I ever over in Green Bay? Like, what do I care? Packer fans hate you. Like, okay. They're like, you can never come to Green Bay. You're like, done. Like, okay. That's like the time, it's like the time I got a ticket. I got pulled over in Omaha one time, and this cop gives me a ticket, and I go, hey, what if I don't pay this? He's like, oh, you don't pay this, then I hope you plan on never coming back to Omaha. And I'm like, done. Okay, cool. Just save myself $200. Thank you for that tip. Like, oh, I didn't realize it was that easy. So I don't care about the caveats. I'm with you. I just want to go out there and win football games, and I just want to continue to stack wins, build the ladder, build everything. And I'm going to ask you about Matt Eberflus, because we've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. Like, okay, well, Eberflus showed last year where they win 6 out of 7, finished strong. He won a couple of games in a row, never won 3 in a row. Okay, well, now we keep giving him these challenges, and he keeps meeting them.
Yep.
Do you feel what's your confidence level right now that, hey, you know what? Like the team was rolling along, kind of an inopportune time to take a bye because you're like, oh God, they got momentum going. Everything's happening really well. Like it would be nice to continue playing, but whatever, we'll go out there. We'll take that bye week. What's your confidence level with Matt Eberflus right now that this team is going to come out ready, prepared, as much as the Bears can be? Because you know they're going to put up 2 3 and outs before they start going offensively, and they're going to fall behind 7-0. But what is your confidence level that Matt Eberflus is going to have this team ready to go?
Well, my confidence level of Matt Eberflus is as high as it's ever been. October 22nd of last year, the Bears won a game at home for the first time in 392 days. Right, so a year ago at this time, it couldn't have been lower. And now since then, they haven't lost a home game. It's been over a year since they've lost a home game. And so it's just gone a complete 180. And good for him. I am supremely confident that Matt Eberflus will have this defense ready, regardless of who's available. Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker didn't practice. Kyler Gordon, I think, is the one that is my bigger concern because I just think he's such a huge part of this defense and a real weapon that Matt Eberflus uses, not just in coverage, but in the run game and the blitz to get into the backfield and get yourself a surprise sack. So to me, I know what this defense is going to give you. What is it? 12 straight games they've held a team under 21 points or less now at this point. So they are consistent. Each player across from the 3 tiers, from D-line, linebacker to cornerbacks, are getting better and better each week. You see that development. So I am very confident that Matt Eberflus will have this defense ready. They're so bend but don't break. So the place I know where they'll excel is in the red zone. The one thing that does have me of my biggest focus for this week isn't Caleb Williams in the offense, isn't what Jaden Daniels can. It's the run game for Washington, which does include Jaden Daniels. But we were talking to Brian Baldinger today. And look at how many runs the Bears have given up for 10 yards or more. Yeah. And that is the biggest thing is they have to try to slow down these explosive run plays from happening against them. Jonathan Taylor had a big play over 100 yards. Chuba Hubbard also had, some big numbers against them. You saw the running back for the Rams, Kyron Williams, right? He had 100 yards as well. So this is a running attack here that is very formidable, and the Bears defense has been very good, bend but don't break, but they have given a little bit up on the run game. So they're going to be tested this week, and especially without Kyler Gordon, they're going to have to be really on their toes if they want to make sure they hold the line.
Yeah, and Chuba Hubbard also had a pretty nice game against them as well. And so it is a concern. The one thing that I've noticed, though, and I'm going to go back and look this up for some of our shows this week, both fantasy-wise and here on the Sick Podcast, how much of that is first half? Because it always feels – because Tony Pollard also had a nice game in week 1. It's interesting of like how much of that always seems to be in the first half. This is where the confidence level for me is really increasing with Matt Eberflus is because – the second half is when they really seem to put the screws on the teams. And it's not like we've been outside of the last 2 games. There really hasn't been a thing where they've been blowing teams out and they've made teams one-dimensional to take them out of some situational football. But they've been in like close games, but still shut teams down, which shows me like, hey, Matt Eberflus kind of sees what's going on during the game. And I think that's kind of an underrated skill. Like we see so much with these coaches whose first 15 are amazing and they script the plays and they go out there and like, oh, this team's coming out hot. Let's take a look at what KOC did this week against the Detroit Lions, where God, you wondered if the Vikings were going to blow them out. You're like, geez, this could be a runaway. And then obviously the Lions made a switch. I think the Lions do a nice job. I think this is a big problem for me with the Lions is that like they really seem to be able to like make adjustments in game and move on and do all these different things. So that's one of the things though that I've really liked about Matt Eberflus, which gives me more and more confidence is that, okay, these small in-game adjustments shows me that he's got some acumen to what he's doing. And it's really something that people don't talk about. And I think it stems from the fact too, like I remember talking to one of my NFL Network colleagues months, it might have been last year. I think it was last year. Maybe it was the beginning of this year. And he's also, I'm not going to say who it was, but he's also a Bears fan. And he was like, what is Matt Eberflus? Like, what do we think? What do we know? And I'm like, well, I mean, defensive coordinator, for the Colts, like well respected in the league, stuff like that. He's like, yeah, but still there's something about it. And I remember walking away from that conversation thinking to myself, like, I understand, because every year there always seems to be like the big name, like who's the big name, like who's coming out, like, oh, like Brian Daboll, for instance, Robert Saleh, both an offensive and a defensive guy. Are huge names. You're like, oh, this guy's can't miss. And then he goes out and you're like, wasn't necessarily great. Dave Canales, well-renowned, one of the top offensive coordinators in the NFL. Now this Carolina Panthers team has there's nothing going on. And I think sometimes when you make these hires, and I know Bears fans will be like, well, Dick Duran was, like the nondescript hires don't always work out either. But I think there's something to be said about Matt Eberflus kind of earned his spot. It wasn't like somebody who he once had lunch with Sean McVay, so he got hired. Like, I think he's got some savvy to him that I think people have overlooked for quite some time, and now we're starting to see it a little bit.
Well, as long as Shane Waldron continues to develop Caleb Williams at the rate that they are on the offensive side of the ball, then Matt Eberflus can shine at what he does best, and that's be a play caller and a defensive coordinator / head coach. Last year when Alan Williams, was asked to leave the Bears and he had to take over play calling, you saw the uptick on defense for Chicago. And then obviously they bring in Montez Sweat, and that just kind of poured gasoline on the fire. But at the end of the day, maybe he is a better coordinator than he is a head coach. But ultimately, if their offense and Shane Waldron are doing what they're supposed to do on their side of the ball, then Matt Eberflus can still shine in his role as a defensive head coach. So, is he Jim Harbaugh? Is he Ben Johnson? Is he Kyle Shanahan? No. But does that mean they can't put a winning formula together? Absolutely they can. Absolutely. And you see this formula taking place here each week. And when you talk about the adjustments that the defense has made here in the second half, where they're really starting to tighten things up, well, that also coincides with the Bears taking leads. And that's what they weren't doing for the first 3 weeks of the season, chasing their tails against the Titans, Texans, and Colts. Now, all of a sudden, the Rams and the Panthers and Jaguars, they had leads in those games, which makes it a lot harder for teams to stay committed to the run. And then it really puts you behind the eight ball trying to throw through the teeth of this secondary with the Bears, and then they're going to start forcing some turnovers on you. So, I think maybe the last echelon of improvement that the Bears really need to make is first quarter adjustments, coming out the gate swinging and not being swung on. And, I think they were fortunate to get off the field against Jacksonville in London with only giving up 3 points on that 17 play drive that they had to start the game. So you want a winning formula against Washington, come out the gate, score some points, and put the Washington team on their heels, making them throw a little more than they want to.
Yeah, I would love to see the Bears come out and put the screws to them with a long drive to start the game, matriculating down the field, as they said.
I said matriculating on the show today.
You did.
That's hilarious. We are always on the same wavelength.
Simpatico.
We are. And Carm was looking at me. He's like, matriculating, that's a big word. And I'm like, Carm,
what the? You're 90. You should know this.
That's what we said. He covered Hank Stram, and I'm quoting him, and he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And never mind the fact that anybody should know that quote if you've ever followed football.
If you've ever watched NFL
somebody
films
from the region, Hank Stram is pride and joy of Gary, Indiana, which is only a town or two over from me. So I'm always going to know the Hank Stram lines. Come on now.
Yeah, Bears fans should know. I wouldn't expect a fan base like the Packers to know something like that, because that Packer fan base is not a fan base that likes football. They like drinking, wearing cheese heads, and Lambo Leaps. they're not like ball watchers, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're complete losers.
Yeah, you're right. So like, but a Bears fan should know. Like you spent time, your whole youth should have been like, because I would be like when I was growing up, like Hank Stram was old timey back then. But you would watch those NFL film features and be like, oh, this guy seems awesome. And he was an announcer by this time.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Hank Stram used to be the guy, like used to nail the Super Bowl winner every year, like every season. And we would drive out every year. We'd go to Las Vegas, go to, this is before, actually, you know, it's funny. We would go to the Las Vegas Club, which is now Circa. And we would go and then like, we would be listening to sports talk radio the whole time because there's like this station out here called the Mighty 690, stemmed from, they had an antenna in Mexico. So it streamed, like you could listen to it all the way into Las Vegas. So the whole 4-hour drive, we were waiting because we knew at some point they were going to put Hank Stram's prediction was going to come on at some point. And then whatever Hank Stram was, whatever he would pick, and I was a college kid, I was not working for the NFL. Whatever Hank Stram picked, we picked. So,
and who's doing that for you guys on NFL Network now? Isn't that Kyle Brandt that's hitting, or is it Peter Schrager?
Oh, Peter Schrager.
Peter's doing it now every year. He nails the Super Bowl.
He does, and he told me because he was in the makeup room after he did this because he picked Chiefs Packers. Speaking of Super Bowl one, speaking of Hank Stram, and I'm like, Peter, you're the worst. He's like, I don't feel good about it. And I'm like, why would you just say it then? Like, I hope your streak comes to an end because it needs to, unless the Packers lose in the Super Bowl, because that would be hilarious.
Well, of course.
But I mean, I guess they would. I can't see eyebrows going head to head with Andy Reid and pulling that off. I could be wrong though. Who knows? But the thing of it is, yeah, so it is Peter who does it. Yeah, so he did it. He wasn't completely sold. I shouldn't sell out Peter like this. Like, sorry.
Sell him out. It's good.
I'll call him out. I would tell him to his face. I would say this while we were on the show. So I'll never say anything that I hear that I don't say when I'm on the show because I know our producers get wild. Because if you ever listen to this show, and I know you're very busy, so I wouldn't expect you to, but anybody who listens to any show that Cynthia Freeland comes on, our producers always get very nervous. He's like, you and Cynthia run your mouth so much. And I'm like, we do this on the show. We do, like, we will sit there and I will call out like, hey, Cynthia, why aren't you on more shows? Why aren't you on the fantasy show more? Like, who can we get rid of? You know, like that's what we do. I grew up idolizing David Letterman, who would do stuff like that. And I don't know why I think I'm as powerful as David Letterman is. But that's the way that my mind works. So I do that kind of stuff. But in any event, did want to ask you though, because you brought up Montez Sweat. Yep. We've seen a number of major trades go down in the NFL. Obviously, Ryan Poles has not been shy about making a big move to get the Bears into a better position. Do you believe the Bears are going to make a move in the next couple of weeks?
Man, it's interesting, right? I mean, Ryan Poles is very aggressive. Last two trade deadlines, traded for Chase Claypool, didn't work out, then traded for Montez Sweat last year, did work out in a big way. But I just feel like this team is not in the same spot those two teams were. And now the Bears are somewhat starting to play with house money for this season. And you have an opportunity in the offseason to really build off of whatever momentum you find yourself in this year. So are you really going to try to jump the gun and get ahead of what this next 5-year window brings for you? You can. It's certainly an option that's on the table. But is Ryan Poles willing to give up any of those picks? I mean, for me, the only name that has intrigued me of all the names they're trying to bring up is, of course, Maxx Crosby. But that's going to come at a huge Khalil Mack type of price tag. Khalil Mack, another name that, if it was for a much cheaper price tag, I wouldn't mind seeing him back, with the Chicago Bears. But at the end of the day, I don't know, man. I think the Bears are probably safe, and Ryan Poles is safe to stand pat here. As aggressive as I want to be, as much as I want them to make the playoffs this year and win a playoff game or two, or hell, win the whole damn thing. I'm not putting a ceiling on any of this, but at the same time, when you look at what they have ahead of them here over the next year and looking into the offseason, I don't know if I want to get greedy at this point. So if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm assuming that the juice is going to be too much this year, and I think he's going to stand pat.
No, I agree with you. Unless it's something, and this would be the defensive equivalent of DeAndre Hopkins, where you're giving up a 6th rounder for a veteran who can come in, and I'm not sure. I don't know who that name would be. I look at it this way: is the Bears when you look at the Khalil Mack, when they made the Khalil Mack trade, it was during the start of Trubisky's 2nd year. And I think the opportune time, and again, I think the NFC is wide open. Like, there's no reason to concede to any one of these teams. I know Detroit's playing very well, and there's no reason to concede winning the Super Bowl, as you said, this season, or getting to the Super Bowl or anything like that. However, I think the prudentness of what Ryan Poles has done, of like not burning all of our assets for one quick run, that the ideal situation to trade for somebody like Maxx Crosby would be during the offseason, whereas you're giving up, and it would actually be after the draft, and it would not be giving up any of our 2025 draft picks. If like using our 3 picks in the first 60 some odd of going out that way and doing it, and then trying to look at leveraging picks from 2026. Because you feel like in the 2026 draft, if all things go according to the way that we're expecting them to be, that's going to be in the late 20s, early 30s, maybe 32nd. That's the picks I want to get rid of. That's when we can start being like, let's get rid of these picks. We don't need it. We don't know how this season ends up. The Bears could end up with 7 wins again this year, which last season gave us the 9th overall selection. Right. So you don't know where this goes, although our strength of schedule is so difficult that I don't think that we get the benefit of the doubt. I don't know how that works.
That's where if like I'm not advocating to Ryan Poles to make this trade for Maxx Crosby and go all in. I'm also not pressuring him like, if you don't make a trade like this, you're a bad GM. That being said, if he were to make that trade, I am not going to be critical of it.
Oh, I'm not mad at it.
I will be celebrating, because now you have Maxx Crosby, because after this year, you still have 2 years of control with him. And so if you bring him in right now, or if you win a couple games and you bring him in, you're bringing him into a team that is now on pace to win 10 plus games and potentially win games in the playoffs. And now all of a sudden that pick, if you're giving up multiple 1st round picks, multiple second, now those 1st round picks are in the mid to late 20s. If you have Maxx Crosby and Montez freaking Sweat rushing the quarterback. So it is a risk if they were to do it. If he is available, the Bears at least have to consider it. And when you look at Ryan Poles trying to trade for Matthew Judon before the season started, he's an aggressive GM. I think he does things with calculation, but he also is extremely aggressive. And I think Ian Cunningham is his balance. We saw that through the draft process, where it appeared that Ryan Poles wanted to trade up to get Rome Odunze, and Ian was able to kind of calm the waters as that night was going down. So I think Ian is the good balance there, but I know Ryan Poles has got that itchy trigger finger, and if he goes for it with Maxx Crosby, I will not criticize it. It's just not something that I'm going to apply too much Twitter pressure to.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I look at it this way. It's like you and your buddy are planning a trip to Las Vegas, and you're like, go ahead and book the hotel room, but don't go all out. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to book us at the Luxor, that's fine. It'll be a good time. And then your friend calls up and is like, I booked this at Circa. You're like, okay, did it cost a little bit more? Yeah, but ultimately it's going to be worth it. Like, I'm not going to be upset for having to go down and stay at Circa. Oh no, please. Like, no, of course you'll be like, oh, that's fine. This is probably something we should have done otherwise. Like, we were trying to be prudent at first, maybe save a few bucks, but then you're like, we'll have a better time if we went to Circa. So maybe, and if Ryan Poles feels that way about Maxx Crosby, I will certainly be on board. You won't have to sell me on the move. I'll be like, okay, I can see the wisdom. It's kind of like when we were talking about coming into the season. Like, I see the wisdom of what people are trying to say with whatever the move is. And like, I agree with your, I agree with your process. And if they've decided that they want to do a process with him, that they want to wait, go after it next year, fine. If they want to go after it this season, because again, the NFC is kind of wide open. I'm with that as well. And if you don't get Maxx Crosby traded from the Raiders, you could actually go out there and collect some Maxx Crosby trading cards. And by the way, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, or Sky, they've got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles, in addition to their Chicago-focused items. They also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and players. Will it be Maxx Crosby at some point? Who knows? I didn't show this to Tyler Scott yet. We're going to show him later this week. This is so Windy City Sports. I got this. The mailman got a little aggressive this week. He's like, "Oh, what'd you get?" I'm like, "Are you just really like sitting there?" I'm like, he was like, "Oh, I collect sports cards." So I was sitting there talking to him, and I go, "You don't want me to open this box in front of you?" He's like, No, it's cool. I would have. What one's this one? Oh yeah, this is the card that this is the Lamar Jackson.
Wow. This
is what Roma Dunze and Tyler Scott were fighting over. About like, hey, who gets this card? I got the Cole Kmet. I'm very, very excited for my Cole Kmet. And I got that right before the game against Jacksonville. So I felt very good about that. Or no, we did that. We broke the box before the Jacksonville game. So I feel pretty good about that. So it'll be interesting to see. I haven't talked to Tyler about this yet. I'll be flying out. I'm taking this with me to Arizona, and we'll see who gets that card. And I would like for Maxx Crosby to someday be a Bear. That would be good. But I wonder, you brought up Khalil Mack, and I don't know what the Chargers are doing. Who knows? The Chargers might feel like they're competitive. I don't know. After they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, they might not feel that way. But, yeah, I still think defensively, you find a veteran. If the Chargers are willing to be like, yeah, we'll give you even a 4th-round pick, I'm like, although I don't know if we have
the Bears don't have one. That's the other aspect of this is when you're looking at what can the Bears do at the trade deadline? They don't have very many picks this year to give away anymore. So, that's the other tricky part, unless you're going to give away future draft picks beyond this year. So that's why it leads me to believe, unless it's some big blockbuster thing, which is highly unlikely, it's going to just make that proposition even harder. Because now you're looking at even the pick you have coming from Pittsburgh, where Justin Fields, if he had started over 51%, would have been a 4th-round pick. Well, right now, if Russell Wilson continues playing the way he did here on Sunday night, now that's a 6th-round pick. Yeah. So, the Bears just don't have very much more to work with, after, Ryan Poles kind of exhausted all the avenues he possibly could to build the roster we have now.
No, and I'm not upset at any of that. And it was funny because Brandon Shagrew pulled out a tweet from when the Bears made the deal for the Carolina Panthers, and somebody was just crushing the Bears for not getting enough for the number 1 overall pick. You saw that, right?
I saw this guy. Yep.
I'm like, oh, how do you feel now? Like, I thought like they got in line because they used, instead of taking a 1st-rounder, they got DJ Moore. And if Carolina had just offered, see, that's the thing, man. Carolina could have just traded Brian Burns and Kevin. I don't know if it would have helped because that organization seems pretty dysfunctional, but it would have been, I don't know. It's funny. It's just funny to me how that worked out. Hey, Sammy, though, how about a question or two? I'm sorry. I know that we haven't taken any questions. Reminder, too, the Tyler Scott Show will be on later this week. We're going to be doing sick picks. We're going to have Laquan Jones joining us on the NFL Network. He works as one of the researchers for Good Morning Football. He's also on the NFL Fantasy Podcast with the NFL Network. Anybody, any questions, anything pertinent? Scottish Bear. There's our guy. Adam, would you give up losing to the Packers for the next 5 years if it meant a Super Bowl win? Absolutely. I don't give an F. Like, I would definitely take that. Like, I don't, like, it doesn't matter to me whether, like, who are you beating to get there or whatever. I remember one time I got an opportunity to talk to Harry Carson, and me being a dick, I go up to him and I go, hey, Harry Carson, how are you? Hey, sir, you guys won the Super Bowl in '86, but did it feel hollow because you didn't have to play the Bears? He's like, I don't give a shit. Like, who cares? We won the Super Bowl. What do I care if the Bears were there or not? You guys lost to the to the Washington, I think it was. 86 would have been the Washington, right?
Mhm.
Or was it the Rams? Washington. Or 49ers. No, probably Washington. 49ers were 84, and then we beat the Rams. That's that's the thing too, is like when you look back at 85, the Bears didn't play the Cowboys because the Cowboys got smoked by the Rams. Their first playoff win was against the Giants. That was when Sean Lindetta missed the punt. Then they beat the Rams, not the Cowboys, for the Super Bowl. And I remember my dad not caring, being like, whatever. Like, okay, who cares? We're going to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I'll take losing to the Packers. Yeah, I will get swept by the Packers every season if we get to win the Super Bowl.
Right. It's
I
like
wouldn't care.
The Bears won the Super Bowl over the Patriots and not the Dolphins, right? They didn't get to avenge the one loss. So, nobody's apologizing for those kind of things ever.
Nobody cares. Yeah. Like, ultimately, nobody cares. If you want to be a hater, and even back in the day, there were no Packer fans, so nobody was bringing this up at all. So it wasn't like they were still playing games in Milwaukee, like to try to make themselves a thing. So it's fine. I would take that for sure. How about you? You would take that, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
What are we doing? Nobody. But go on a Packers podcast and reverse that. I think they would have like a 90-minute discussion. Like, but it beating the Bears. Like, that's it. Like, they're the meme of the guy with the two buttons. Like, when the Super Bowl beat the Bears and the guy can't make the call. It's like they're Sophie's choice, so to speak. Like, I don't know. They're both so meaningful to me. I'll take the Super Bowl any day of the week. How about another question, though? Because I do know we got to go. What do you think about a Calais Campbell trade? Yeah, again, that's one that Atlanta threw some money out there. Hasn't quite worked out for them. I don't know if Atlanta still feels like they're in the mix or not. They're going for the divisional title, and you look at what's happening in Tampa Bay. You look what's happening in New Orleans. I'm not sure that Atlanta wants to get out there, but as a vibe guy, like, I wouldn't hate having Calais Campbell on this team.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on the price tag, but I'm not fighting any kind of quality depth at this point, especially while the Bears are on a playoff run. Let's go.
Yeah, if you can make it work and you're giving up the Steelers' 6th round pick, like, whatever, like, just do it. I think anything outside of it, like, yeah, again, like the DeAndre Hopkins equivalent, I would do. Is there one more, or else we can start wrapping this up? Get us out of there. Would you trade Herbert? Okay, Bush Hog, thank you so much for this question. I'm going to say this. I don't feel the need to get rid of somebody for the sake of getting rid of somebody. Like, I don't know. I don't want to have an injury crop up or anything like that. But if we have depth, and if Khalil Herbert's being cool and he's not causing a scene or doing any of that stuff, like, I'm saying hold on to him. Why would I give up an asset like that? I don't think that it's not like somebody's offering us a 1st round pick. I'm good with sticking with Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, if DeAndre Swift goes down, Khalil Herbert is now probably the guy that takes his job. You're going to leave Roschon Johnson in his role.
Yeah.
Unless somebody's offering you something that's over the top, like higher than a 5th round pick. Somebody starts offering you a 4th round pick. Well, you saw what 4th round picks got you: Austin Booker, got you Keenan Allen, got you guys that are quality players. Hell, Roschon Johnson himself was a 4th round pick at one point. So, if you start delving into that level of offer, then you have to consider it, because you do have Travis Homer. You do have some depth there where you can, move things around, because at the end of the day, they're not using Khalil Herbert at all. But as we know in this sport and how it works, if somebody goes down, you're going to need him at some point. So, you're not just giving him away to add a 6th round pick, which doesn't provide, as much guaranteed value to your team in the future.
Yeah, if somebody's offering a 4th round pick, I think that is a different conversation. But listen, I want to thank you so much for being here. What's going on at CHGO the rest of the week? We talked about the 85 podcast with Cole Kmet. Go check that out. What else is going on with CHGO?
Well, we got a show coming up tomorrow at noon. Nick Moriano will be at Hallis Hall. Mark and I efforting some interesting guests, but haven't got anything locked in, so I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but trying to bring on somebody of note that has a good perspective from Washington and Chicago Bears side of things. And then we're going ahead to game day. We're going to be at Almost Home in Wrigleyville on Sunday for the game at 3:00. I'll be there probably before the noon games start. You can get tickets if you come to our website at allcshow.com/events and come on out. We're going to do a live pregame show, live postgame, live Briggs and Brown show from almost home in Wrigleyville. It's going to be a lot of fun. So come on out, everybody but Christian Solid, who's showing his age in the chat a little bit. He said that gum was 25 cents a pop in 1990, which I would have assumed Christian was much younger than that. But when he said that, now I realize that Christian is Old Man River, which I was not anticipating that. But he's my mortal enemy, Christian.
I'm shocked by this. What is this all about? Christian was not a quarter. I got to remember. So you know what? I think he's right. I think that seems like the 90s were a long time ago. Like that's a long ass time ago. You used to be able to go into Thrifty Drug and you would get candy for like a quarter. Yeah, you'd get like a York peppermint patty for like 25 cents. I guess
gas was under $1. Gas was probably well under $1 by then.
Nah, it was about $1 back then.
About $1?
I grew up in California. It was always expensive, but yeah, it was $1. Because when I worked at Thrifty Drug, 56 enter used to be the code for it. It was like maybe it was 50 cents, but it wasn't. It was well under $1. Not like now going to Target, you're like $2.49. The girl, recycle that gum. Put that on your bedpost. Don't spit it out. Save the wrapper. You're going to need it. No, but in any event, thanks everybody for being here. If there's any gun sponsorship that wants to come out with us, we would love to have you. But thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody for participating tonight. You'll see him on CHGO later this week. You'll see me on the NFL Network. Sick podcast with Adam Regwell, the Tyler Scott Show. Sick picks with Laquan Jones this week. GMFB, all that good stuff. Fantasy Live. So until next time, Sammy, go ahead and play us out and bear down.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcast. Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois.